Hi everyone, welcome back to week 2 of Preptober. My name is Olivia, I am an emerging writer, and I am doing NaNoWriMo for the first time. This is the second Preptober video. I am documenting what it is like preparing for my first novel as a first-time novel writer. I studied screenwriting, so I do understand story, just not in this medium. So I'm kind of self-teaching myself through a bunch of various resources, through NaNoWriMo, through outside resources, and sharing with you along the way what I am learning. And in November, we'll be completely vlogging the whole month and writing this novel. So today's plan is, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the NaNoWriMo worksheet that they have for characters. If you want to access that, there we go. It is on the NaNoWriMo website, and if you watched my video last week, I went through the whole NaNoWriMo website and the prep that they have available to you. That is obviously optional, of course, and at your own discretion of what you'd like to do. Everyone is different. Some people are pantsers and just like go for it and don't even outline, which I feel like I might have to do a little bit of a variation, just how much time I've accidentally given myself for preparing, but that's okay. I also do like discovery writing like a little bit, but I am absolutely like a plotter. So I'm going to go through and do those for some of my main characters, especially my protagonist. I'm writing a fantasy adult novel. It is a bit more of an ensemble piece in terms of it's a family at the very center of it, but there is one main protagonist for sure. So I'm going to really try and figure her out today. I'm also going to use some outside resources that I have that I will go through, particularly the book Story Genius by Lisa Cron, but I am going to go through the NaNoWriMo one first and just kind of get a little start on that. So let's begin. Step into my office. As you can see here, I have the character questionnaire up on my computer. So I'm going to take you through some of these questions and show you kind of what's up. So I will link below NaNoWriMo's website where you can join. So there is this huge questionnaire. So it's called Get to Know Your Characters, and it's 9 pages long, and there are various like parts within it. So at first they have the 3 big character questions, which are: what does your main character want more than anything in the world? What major flaws, internal problems, and obstacles, external problems, will stand in their way? What virtues and support will help them? And then, will your character achieve what they want? Will they change significantly over the course of the story? Why or why not? So those are the big 3 major questions of your character. I've read a lot about, in terms of characters, having internal conflict be just as important, if not more, than external conflict. That's why I'm focusing on character before kind of the world. Like, I know what my world is, I know what my plot is, like, generally, but for me, the character is the most important thing in those internal conflicts, because that's what's going to keep giving me story, because I read stories personally because of character. So I want to write a story that's going to keep the reader reading for the sake of the character and the investment in that person. So there's various sections within the character questionnaire after those 3 questions. Section 1 is major characters, just very like basic question. It almost kind of looks like a dating profile for a character, just more detailed. Then there's a section for supporting characters only, and then there's also a section about the antagonist. So I'm going to quickly go through these. What does your main character want more than anything in the world? Let's find out. I'm trying not to feel guilty for the fact that I'm not producing a lot of words or answers, because I genuinely just have to like sit here and think about it. I also may or may not have made a TikTok in this time involving writing, involving all of this, so like it's fine. I am just kind of sitting here. I luckily have my vision board, so I can kind of look up and try to get some inspiration, which, by the way, if you're interested in that, I did make a whole video where I created this whole thing. I'm finding I'm having to redo the answers because I'll type them out and it'll kind of be like just blabbing, and then I'll, like, one little part of that paragraph, I'll be like, that's what I'm trying to say, and then I'll delete the whole thing and I'll do it again because it's just getting more and more precise and specific, which is what I want. I'm gonna get back into it. So it may or may not be a whole new day. Yesterday I got pretty distracted, and then I had plans later on that I had to like get to, but today I have today off, so I'm going to focus again on the character work. So I've been doing a lot of the NaNoWriMo sheet behind me, which like I said, I'll link down below all the information for that if you would like it. I was going through it, and for me, I don't find it as helpful right now in the process of trying to find the character. I just think for me it's like asking the wrong questions. So I haven't worked through all of it yet. I probably will continue it eventually, but I've been reading Story Genius by Lisa Cron. I'm really enjoying the approach that she has. So I just want to like share some of the things that I've read that I found really important when starting to create my protagonists in particular. They are the reader's portal into this world. Like, our story is going to be funneled through them. They're who we're mainly going to be following their journey, even if they're not necessarily in every scene, you know, their worlds. The story's being funneled through the protagonist, but in a way where it feels like it's happening to us. Like, that is kind of the goal of where this book talks about, like, that's the goal of what we kind of want a protagonist to be, which I really, really resonate with that. And I think definitely, like, I want to make sure I elicit some, like, feelings within my readers. And focusing on the protagonist in order to achieve that goal really does make sense, more so than like the plot, because it's going to be the person they relate to and how they react to it more so than the circumstance, because it's kind of what I said before, unless I cut it out so I'm not repeating myself, but I mentioned before I was talking about specificity, how specificity I've always found makes things more relatable. I've even found that in like my acting background. For those of you who don't know, I went to theater school, trained as like an actor for a bit, because that's originally the route I wanted to go down, and specificity is even really important in performance, and like the tactics that you choose, the way in which you choose to like say things and feel about things and react to things. Like, you have to be specific, and the same thing kind of goes with writing and how your character is feeling about what's going on. The choices that they're making is really, the more specific it is, the more relatable it is, which I know kind of sounds weird when you think about the fact that like, oh, we could be talking about aliens in space, and, you know, they could be, I don't know, they could be going through a crazy dynamic within their grouping of other aliens, you know, one of them could fall in love or have their heart broken and they're in outer space and they're aliens, but that doesn't matter because we as people know what it's like to fall in love. We know what it's like to have your heart broken. If you don't know what that's like, I'm just kidding. It's the reaction, the emotions that make things universal, and by making it specific, it makes us able to actually go like, oh, I've felt that before, instead of being like, this character is sad. Why are they sad? What made them sad? That's the stuff that we relate to. Something that this book also talks about, and it's kind of along the lines of specificity, is kind of learning the background of your character. And I know some people have different versions of what that means. Like, some people will write letters to their character, or like in their character write a letter to the author. I've never really thought about doing that. Like, even when I was acting, I was never like, I need to know what their 5th birthday was like. Stuff never really mattered to me. Don't get me wrong, there's something to be said about your moment before. Anyway, we're not getting into acting stuff, but this is really interesting to think about in terms of knowing your character's past. The thing that this book kind of says is basically imagine like your character the day before the novel starts. It's crazy that I never thought about that, because it's like, oh, your moment before you go into a scene. Sorry, now I feel like I need to explain it. When you're acting, when you're in a play, when you're in a scene, when you walk on stage, you need to know, like, I mean, it's all subjective, but for me, I needed to know, like, where was this character right before? What's the conversation I'm jumping out of going into on this next scene? Like where was I? Why am I entering this room? So it makes sense that, like, even for a novel, you need to know where your protagonist was the day before it began. You want to know what their normalcy is, because you don't want to start in a neutral place. Like, they have to have their misbeliefs, they have to have their opinions already established, because those are going to change throughout the story, but in order for it to change, something has to be there, and it's boring if it's neutral. Anyway, something that I didn't really think about before this, but I think has really changed how I'm going to write characters since reading this book. So let me explain misbelief. Your misbelief is basically you believe something to be true that's not. Like, an example of that is from this book, Story Genius, is that your protagonist's misbelief is that genuine human connection actually weakens you. Like, that is a misbelief. So because of that, they would put themselves in less vulnerable positions. They would not necessarily go out and try to find love or try to find intimate relationships emotionally, because they think it's going to weaken them. Because if you invest that time in someone, say if they pass away or if you get broken up with or something, God forbid, happens, it weakens you because you're now not as strong as you once were, if that makes sense. And how your protagonist overcomes this misbelief is essentially what your story is about. So let me just read an excerpt from Story Genius. This is page 81, chapter is called The Why. It says, only by knowing your protagonist's defining misbelief can you craft a story that will test it to the max, opening his eyes along the way, or depending on the point you're making, tragically not. Which is why you must know what that misbelief is before you begin writing, even though it will take some time for your protagonist to realize that it is a misbelief, let alone that it's what has been preventing him from getting what he wants. So that is kind of why the misbelief is really important and something that I never really thought about. So I think I need to figure out my protagonist more so in-depthly, internally, before I jump onto that, because who they are internally is really what's going to define how people interact with them, how they interact with people, and their misbelief being a huge part of that. So that's the misbelief, and that's what I'm really going to be focusing on. It's also really important to know what your protagonist wants, and being really specific with that, and also why they want it, what they're willing to do to get it. Like something that this book says, which I think is really interesting, the whole concept of like never let them see you sweat kind of thing is what it talks about. Like stories are about the sweating. They're about like exposing the stuff that we like to keep closed behind doors, whether the characters mean to or not. It's very vulnerable and very exposing. Like I'm trying to figure out what they want, why they want it, how much they want it, and what they're willing to do to get it. And it's the same thing, I'm going to compare it again to acting. When I was performing and like doing plays, I would have an objective for the entire play, like as a character. What does this character want through the whole duration of the show? But then you go and you break it scene by scene, and each scene you have an objective. Out of every conversation a character has, what are they trying to get out of it? What are they trying to hide? You know, all those kinds of things. But it is good to know that like overall you have a goal, you have an objective, your protagonist has something they want. And then you also need to look at it scene by scene, which I'm not at the point yet where I'm going scene by scene, but I need to start with the overall arc first. So I need to figure out what they want and what they're willing to do to get it. And the misbelief that I kind of explained before is going to be the internal struggle, or one of the many internal struggles that is actually in their way of getting what they want. Because yes, our plot and our outside world, the exterior obstacles are going to be obstacles, but that can only take us so far in the story. So having your internal need, your internal want, and then your internal misbeliefs that are going to kind of corrupt your way of getting what you want. Misbelief is really going to step in the way of what they internally want. So there's also a level of like, they have to get over hurdles within themselves, not just like, oh, I'm trying to destroy this ring, I need to get to this mountain in order to do it, and there's a bunch of orcs in my way. Like, no, there's a lot more. Like, it's the internal conflict that Frodo's going through and what the ring is doing to him that is the more interesting part, and that is actually getting in his way, because once he gets there and once he's finally like, I beat all my external conflicts, I can throw the ring in the fire and it'll be gone forever. Wait, oh my god, I'm internally feeling this way. This like corruption has sunk into me mentally. I'm not going to do it now, even though I've defeated all these external obstacles. Kind of see what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I'm at with the whole Story Genius method of it right now, and I'm finding it really valuable. In terms of what NaNoWriMo has in these kind of questions brings up too is like, how do they feel about themselves? What is the relationship that they have with themselves? Do they like themselves? What is their biggest regret? What's their favorite memory? Like, again, it's kind of the thing where specificity is so important when you ask yourself these questions. There's an example in Story Genius that I think shows how specificity works so well. And you could do it right now. You close your eyes, and I'm going to give you 2 words, and just picture whatever you picture when I say them, okay? So close your eyes, and picture a barking dog. I don't know about you, but when I picture a barking dog, I am in my grandma's backyard. It is green grass. Her little tiny dog, who is outrageously full of energy, is just like barking at me. Just annoying, but I love her. Whereas maybe if someone was like attacked by a dog or had a negative dog relationship with a dog in the past, they would picture something more violent. But I have no trauma with dogs, so I have this happy-go-lucky memory of it, but others would think differently. So even those 2 words, what I envision is so specific. And I'm sure you probably had the same instance too, where you were in a specific spot that is very different than mine, even if it is your grandma's dog, even if it is the backyard, so different. We set our character in a certain instance, especially with other characters, they're all gonna react differently. And that's gonna be a jumbled chaos, and it's gonna be so beautiful. Like, oh god, I just keep thinking of like Lord of the Rings when they're in that like tomb, you know, the one where like Pippin is like causing shit and like hits the book down that well and all the goblins come. All those characters reacted differently to the sound of that coming because of who they are internally. Like Pippin is not used to adventures, he's like freaking scared, whereas Gandalf's like, are you kidding me, man? Now I have to deal with this shit, you know, like. And I think if you know how they think about themselves, it's gonna help you understand how they will react to things. So this was my brief little character dump, and kind of updating you on what I'm doing. I'll also link the Story Genius. I had to get it off Amazon. It wasn't in any of the local bookstores around me or chapters or anything. Sorry. I would love to hear in the comments how you play on characters. If you want to share, I would love to know. Some of you from last week have like also shared that you're new NaNoWriMo people, and like, god, keep me posted throughout the weeks of NaNoWriMo and Preptober how you're doing. I would love to know. If you found any of this helpful in knowing how I'm doing it the first time, great. If you didn't, that's also great. But that is how I'm approaching characters this week, and hopefully it goes well. Next week we will be back again. I think we're gonna focus more on plot. Thank you so much for joining this week's video, and I will see you here next week. I post here every Sunday, and let's continue Preptober and jump into NaNoWriMo. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. We can connect there too if you would like. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.